Hi everyone, Cindy Skalicki here with On Point Communications, bringing you our next episode of Getting to the Point, where we bring to you an expert in his or her field to explain 3 points that are near and dear to that person's heart to help you on your journey in whatever you are doing with your business this week in particular. And today I'm so excited to bring to you Nick Armstrong of WTF Marketing right here from Fort Collins. How are you today, Nick?
Good, Cindy. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for joining me.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah.
It's I've been seeing your rapid fire stream of guests, and every time I'm like, oh, I got to go here. It's going to be great. So
Well, here you are. Awesome. We're excited to have you. And I always like to tell our viewers and listeners how we kind of connected and met in the first place. But you and I connected through one of our community events locally in Northern Colorado called 1 Million Cups. And I remember hearing you come in and talk for one of those sessions, and just, you have an engaging speaking style. You're very creative, you're bold, and I remembered you. So it was memorable and informative, and you can tell right away from watching you that you're passionate about what you do. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little intro of what you do at WTF Marketing and whatever you think is relevant.
yeah, thank you. And I think that, every time I go up and speak, I warn the people, my hosts, I say every time it's going to be different. It's going to be something that's unexpected, go in different directions. And so I apologize in advance.
Oh, that's okay.
So here, what I've been focusing on lately is event marketing. And a lot of different things go into event marketing: how you bring a community together, what that community looks like, how you bring leaders up through that community, and how they interact with the space.
Mm-hmm. And right now, I mean, we're taping this in the end of 2020. And so those community style events are tricky to do. In fact, you and I were both on a summit at the beginning of this pandemic together. We were on a panel together where we got to chime in about how we could help the businesses in our community with their marketing to communicate to customers. So clearly we're sort of in a corner here, having to do a lot of this virtually right now. But why don't we jump right into, the first point here, which is something you're really passionate about, and that's getting really good leadership together in the same room to make change happen, right? Is that kind of how you would describe that?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to bring the smartest people in your community together to help you solve a problem. One of the first things we did with Fort Collins Comic Con, with Nate, Scott, and I, were sitting in a coffee shop thinking, what do we want to do with this? And we said, well, we need to bring in a bigger partner, somebody like United Way, Library District. And so we sat down with Paula Watson-Lackamp from the Library District, and we said, what do you want to do? Could we do a geek community centric event here? Mm-hmm. And the answer was resounding, heck yes, let's do it. And so we all sat down, we figured out how to do this thing. And then we realized we needed to bring in a lot more people. So we brought in a vendor coordinator, a volunteer coordinator. We brought in somebody to handle the programming and panels. And we grew the team organically year after year after year. Mm-hmm. And over the span of 6 years now, we've raised over $120,000 for the Library District.
Wow.
And it's all through badge sales. And the community has sort of rallied around this event. Now, we couldn't have done that. I couldn't have done that alone. There's no way to have done it.
Right.
I think the best way to do things is to find the smartest people who are smarter than yourself, and being okay with admitting that is good.
Yes.
Find people who are smarter than yourself and bring them in to help solve the problem. We did the exact same thing with Fort Collins Startup Week. Mm-hmm. People who are crazily smarter than I am brought together the brain crawl, Ariana Friedlander, who's been one of your guests.
Yes, I know.
Ariana. Yeah, and we had so many smart people. Excuse me.
Okay, no worries.
There we go. Sorry.
No worries. It happens.
Zoom cut 2. That was the Roomba going off.
The truth is out.
It wanted to be a guest.
That's awesome. I need a Roomba.
It's worth it. Let me tell you.
Okay.
So there's a brand called the Osmo, which is so much better. The Roomba gets all the press, but the Osmo, it creates the carpet lines. And I'll tell you, 90% of cleaning is the psychology behind how it's done.
So true. So true. This is
it's all the lines. It's the lines. So feel free to keep this embarrassing clip here and
I'm gonna
add it
keep
as a
it.
segment.
I'm actually going to add to the craziness and tell you that I remember telling someone once who was hurried from, his wife was coming home from a long weekend and he hadn't had time to clean. And I was like, just get the dust spray and spray it in the room like air freshener. And she will think that you dusted.
That's exactly.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Nick. Keep going on your leadership. Well, and maybe I'll just jump in and say,
Yeah.
that the startup week that this was your first year, right, of leading startup week in Fort Collins?
Yeah, first year is the lead organizer, yes.
Right.
But I've been on the team for several years before this.
Right. And I've been involved in the startup week locally since I started on point. I think I attended in 2015 and then started speaking in 16 and beyond. And it's a really amazing event in Colorado. And you really, I've sung your praises about this for a long time, but it was so well organized this year. And
thank you.
it was from bringing these smart people together and bringing them into the room and just knocking it out of the park, especially with that scale up day that happened at the library campus. I mean, I can't wait for next year. The reason that you're kind of you created an event that's pretty sticky, in my opinion, in people's brains, because it's pretty much the last time that we all got together in this community before we were having to stay home for a long time. So I have fond memories of 2020, but it kind of capped at the end of February.
The Techstars team reached out and said, "How are you guys doing? Do you need anything?" We were like, "We just had our event, and we were really well positioned leading into the pandemic, and we were really well positioned because, as I said, so many smart people did contribute to the event, and the scale up day, the scale up week that you had mentioned was brought together by Phil and Candace. Mm-hmm. And those two members of the team alone pulled so many brilliant entrepreneurs into the scene that there were lessons to be learned. It's recorded. It's actually available on the Startup Week website. You can watch that.
Great. Perfect.
And so there's still lessons to be learned from that, even in the midst of a pandemic.
Absolutely.
We had Kip Baker, who brought in Greg Deal, the amazing Native American artist, and he did so many cool things on stage for us that it just was mind blowing. That was a partnership with the Music District, Mickey from the Music District. We had so many great people. Jana, who brought together the competition at the end with so many great entrepreneurs and startups who are and all of these brains are local. That's the really important part, is that so many of these people, you look around and you don't, it's that idea of the people passing in your life have the exact same experiences just in a mirror. And so you're trying to figure out who are these geniuses amongst you. They're everywhere. Everyone around you has great stories to tell and can be part of a team and help solving problems. And so
I love
that's my philosophy.
I love it. And what I feel during Startup Week often is my strategy every year changes. And so I want to kind of take that into point too about kind of event marketing and why it's so effective and what the benefits of event marketing are that are not in other kinds of marketing. And I think it kind of has to do with how we experience the event. And so, I remember my first year of Startup Week, I went to as many events as I could that I was interested in, and realized that was not the best strategy because I was overloaded. I didn't know what to do after I got out of it because I had just taken in too many things. The second year, I remember being a little more judicious about how I organized my time. And each year I try, and it depends on where my business life is, where my personal life is, how much I can actually go to. But this particular year was really fun because I did a lot of strategic thinking about where I wanted to be. I ended up having 4 presentations, which I didn't mean to. So I was busy presenting also. But what do you have to say, Nick, about the event marketing as a whole and why it is so powerful?
Structurally, event marketing is creating value in a particular direction. And so we tend to think a lot about, it's bringing the community together. Great. Yes. And is it highlighting a particular speaker? Yeah, sure. Is it about the swag, getting people to network? Yeah. Okay, great. All of those things combined are fine. But when it's really well done, event marketing doesn't just exist any of those things in a bubble. Like, it's not just about great swag. It's not just about great networking. It's timing, of course, like the confluence of the pandemic alongside Startup Week, and getting to learn all of these great lessons ahead of time. But also the help was really focused this year. And in particular, we made a concerted effort to make specific tracks very accessible to the audience and in particular location on particular days in sequence. And
Okay.
so a lot of effort went into building that schedule, the way that it was created and the way that it was presented to the attendees. So the more focus that we put into that in advance, the more value those attendees were going to get out of that. And it avoids some of the like leapfrogging that you have to do in traditional seminars or a traditional event where you go from place to place to place and you're sprinting to get there.
Yeah.
You slam down, you start your notes, and then you don't learn anything. By the end of the week, you're back to your old habits again, which doesn't help anybody. In this, we really tried to create some sort of lesson they could learn.
What you're really explaining to me is the fact that the image I'm comparing this to is like building an app with user experience in mind. I mean, you're basically trying to climb inside of the individuals attending the event and think about what they would like to learn about and do if they were X type of business or person, Y or Z. And that takes so much effort and strategy, but if you can pull that off, it really does change the event because you have excited people ready to grow and meet the, like-minded people in their businesses and whatnot, instead of, zooming across town late for another meeting you really wanted to try to go to, but you are 10 minutes late, so you missed all the introductions, which is the networking part, right? So,
Exactly.
well, where did you learn how to do this kind of stuff, Nick? Was it in your was it just by design, you just trial and error kind of kept trying new things, or did you go to school for this? Did you take classes?
Well, my major at CSU, go Rams, I was a marketing major, and I also had a secondary major in CIS, which is Computer Information Systems.
Yeah.
I was the world's worst programmer.
Okay.
And so I really was just ignoring what I wanted to do with my life. And I joined KCSU, which is the student radio station, in my second semester. And loved it. And they had events all the time and we're doing great things. And so I kind of maybe absorbed some things through proxy, but I'll tell you that the first person who really like laid down the line for what an event should be was Nate Scott. And he created the Fort Collins zombie crawl back in the day. And so, and that was the original, the OG zombie crawl, where it was really fun. Everybody could come together, put zombie makeup on. It wasn't super scary or anything like that. And he said, if the event isn't fun, if it's not fun, why are we doing it? Like, what is any of the rest of it for? So fun has to be built into the core concept of it. And that's true of Startup Week. If you're not having fun at Startup Week, something's wrong.
Yeah. Well, it's part of your marketing tagline. We make marketing fun, right?
Exactly. And it has to be. It's true across the board on anything you do. If you're not entertained, why are we doing it? And that's also true of the debates and everything else that's political right now. If it's not fun, why are we watching it?
Right.
It should be a game show. We'll fact check you and you get 1 minute to respond and 1 minute less every time you get it wrong.
Right. Well, it translates to the things that I help people do also. I was just posting yesterday, my 6th grade daughter the other night was working on a constellation slideshow that she had to do for her astronomy class. And I taught her how to rearrange some of the PowerPoint icons so that, or not icons, but how to do a couple tricks on PowerPoint. And she said, Mom, wow, this is my favorite slide. I love this one. And so she went and made all the other ones just as fun as this one was. And that was the whole point, was like, she's so excited now to present this. And that's what I want. I never really thought of fun as one of my core values. I mean, I think I'm pretty fun, but fun has to be part of the recipe when you're presenting too. You have to love your slides. You have to love your message. And it's really much better if you're having fun when you're on the stage. So.
Yeah. And this is true of, virtual teaching. It's true of everything that we do nowadays. And especially for virtual events, there are gimmicks that make it seem fun, like you put it into a game environment or whatever. I've heard of meetings held in Red Dead Redemption, which is a Western video game. There's meetings held in Minecraft now. If it's not fun, why are we doing it? And there's a synergy that occurs when you have you're fun happening at the same time as you're learning, and it creates a more memorable experience. And so it's emotionally resonant. It
I
sticks.
gotta hold more fun into my webinars. I mean, I got 2 coming up today and tomorrow. I better get on the ball and make some edits.
Your jokes are pretty solid, I have to tell you. I mean, I would sit in your startup week sessions, and I was hearing the audience laugh. I'm like, this is good.
Yeah, we did have a lot of fun. Usually it's because I'm telling all my failure stories and how they should learn from them. So that always works pretty well. So
It's always good.
well, let's talk over to point 3, Nick, and let's talk about problem solving. And
Yeah.
you know, some of the things that you and I have talked about offline include, you know, how do we approach problem solving when it comes to our communities or things that we see? So why don't you touch on some of that with regard to event marketing and community and how that holds together?
You know, there are always problems to solve, and highly motivated people will always try and solve problems, and seek out things that they can influence and do to make their community a little bit better. I don't know if you've seen Hamilton, but
My daughter knows it by heart, but I have not seen it
nonstop.
yet.
Yeah. I watched Hamilton, and I think I got a different, as a polymath, I got a different, you know, interpretation of what Hamilton was. And I was like, man, I really am wasting what I'm doing. I need to be doing more.
Right.
And Hamilton was 32 when he wrote the Federalist Papers, 32 or 34. And so we can learn a lot from that. He was in an era without electricity, was burning tallow candles, was staying up writing for 8 hours a day, and taking breaks just barely for coffee and for lunch. And the editors were hovering over his shoulder saying, you got to get this done. You got to write it. You got to get it done. Wow. And knowing that that was the pressure that he was under, that this was like nothing else mattered during this time period besides getting this Federalist paper set done.
Right.
I think that we can learn a lot about the idea of focus. In a looking back, you know, hindsight's 2020. We can look back and we can say, yeah, he did an amazing array of things. He established a national credit. He created a bank. He created all of these things, all of the financial system and he, you know, supported the new U.S. Constitution, all these other things. And we think, oh, he did all of those things, you know, simultaneously.
Yeah,
that's not true. Right. You have to, if you're a passionate individual who is trying to solve a problem. So in our case, we wanted to raise money for children's literacy for Comic-Con. Okay. We had to focus on that, and we had to say, what is the best mechanism to get this to occur? Because in other places, Comic-Cons are, you know, $75 a ticket. You go for a weekend, you have your great time, obviously. You get to meet guest stars. The guest stars' autographs are $50 a pop, et cetera, et cetera. And this all adds up. And that's all before the art, right? Sure. So with the other, you know, subsequent problem that we wanted to solve was, what is creator literacy look like? Like speaking specifically of literacy, what does creator literacy look like? Yeah. Not just like, how do you read and write, but how do you create in a way that is meaningful and sustainable? And all around my office, you see the art, and it's all local art. And it's from Comic-Con. and so one of the things we didn't want to do was squeeze the artists to death, who often pay $300 and $350 a booth to come and show up for a weekend to show off their art and hopefully make that money back. We charge folks $75 a booth. And if they don't want power, they only are paying $50 a booth. And we only charge attendees $20 for their ticket for the entire weekend. And kids only get in for $10.
Oh, nice.
If they're under 5, they get in for free. So the reason that we do all of those things, it's structural. It's because, you know, we want to feel good about ourselves, that other people can come in and enjoy this thing, not just if you have money, but anyone can come in and enjoy this thing. Right. Anyone in our community can find it accessible, and anyone can show up, pop up at booth, and, you know, have artist space to show off their work and talk to their audience in that sustainable way. Right. So all of those things were structural and built into the bones of the event.
And then you have the ability to look around and see, you know, where's my influence right now? How can I, you know, when I'm looking for to solve problems, there's a lot that we can each do within our own circles before we can go further out. It's like throwing a stone in a lake, right? It's got that ripple effect piece. And so you can make sure to touch the areas of change and with your influence that are closest to you, then they will therefore grow outward and beyond.
Well, and the bedrock of the entire organization was working with the library to help influence literacy. So
Right.
literacy can take on a lot of forms, and it's not just, like I said, reading and writing.
Right.
And we eventually expanded to include health literacy. Because at the
Okay.
time that we had started the Kessel Run, which is a Star Wars themed 5K,
Okay.
um, it
Nice.
is, and it's family
That's
friendly.
cool.
Anybody can attend. It's free to come out and do it. You get t-shirts if you pay for it. It's a lot of fun, but you get to dress up as a Star Wars character, go out and run around the library 7.5 times, I think it is. And that's a 5K.
Nice.
And,
That's
and
good to
eventually that,
know.
yeah, that became the Kessel Runners program, which is
Okay.
a couch to 5K. And it teaches
Okay.
you through educated runners and folks who have been there, done that, got the t-shirt, how to go from your couch doing no running whatsoever
Mhm.
to running 5Ks on a
Yeah.
regular basis.
Right. Right.
And
And
and we couldn't have done it unless we focused on that literacy aspect of it. And that was our really, we had to start somewhere, which was children's literacy programming. Great.
yep.
Then we moved on to, all right, how do we get creator literacy? Great. All right, let's build on to that and do the next thing, which is health literacy.
Right. I love the creator literacy piece because you're right. I mean, obviously, literacy is far more than reading and writing. And if you go toward health literacy, there's financial literacy, there's all kinds of different types of literacy. But I like that creator literacy to, to be educated in creating and to learn some of the rules of the road, if you will, because, I mean, I've got, you know, some experience at global agencies where digital marketing, that was back before there was e-commerce, though. So much has changed since, and so I'm still constantly learning through more types of literacy training in areas that I'm falling short and need to pack on some extra learning and some tips. So it's just never ending, and that's a good thing, right? That's fun, and if you can make learning fun, all the more power to you, right?
Well, there's so much. It's a buffet of content right now.
Yeah.
And we
Oh,
had talked about this during our panel together on the Thrive session and
yeah.
summits.
Yeah.
There's so much content coming at everybody all the time that
Yeah.
focus on the other end is really important as well.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I dove deep into was learning about learning. There's a free course on Coursera. Um,
Okay.
I learned a lot about streaming through one of our Comic-Con volunteers, Jeff, who is he just knew all of the endpoints and how to hook everything up. And in the span of a weekend before Comic-Con 2020, we had to put together essentially a broadcast network.
Mhm.
And so we had to learn
Wow.
this from scratch and put it
Yeah.
together so that we could stream our Science Spectacular and get
That's
artists doing
awesome.
live drawings and all the rest of this stuff.
Yep.
So there's a lot of learning that has to happen, but it has to be focused learning. And in the era where everything is accessible and everything is ready to go and at your fingertips, being able to have the wherewithal to focus and really and nail down onto your topic is an important one.
We could do a whole nother episode on just deep work and focus, because how hard is that I mean, you're right. There's just too many options for us to choose from, and to learn is to grow. But if you try to learn in tidbits, that's the curse of the internet, is that there's so much available. How good is it? How much am I going to learn out of this free program versus a paid program from an expert? And you have to make all these decisions like this, or you'll get paralyzed. But to your point, and then we're almost out of time, if you can believe it, but to your point about learning how to learn, that reminds me of a person on the West Coast. His name's Greg Eiler, and I took a class from him on how to build online courses, and he hammered this phrase into our heads every single day, multiple times a day. And I'll never forget it. He just said, put the learner first. And that was it. Just and you did that at Startup Week and at Comic, put the participant first would be maybe your way of saying that. But I think that's just brilliant, to just put them first. That's who you're trying to achieve success with, and you're trying to help them. So don't be, it's not about you, it's about the learners and about the people that you're serving. So that's awesome.
Absolutely. And it's really easy when you're in the moment to get caught up in the minutia of the thing. Like, oh, dude, so-and-so get their swag bag, or did whatever happened to this, is the AV working in this room? And so that's where it helps to have a really good and dedicated team. Ben, our
Well,
volunteer at Startup Week, was a rock star going back and forth running between, because he's
yeah.
also the Kessel Runners lead.
Okay.
He ran back and
Good
forth
runner.
between each of the
Yeah.
venues and got everybody's AV tech set up. So
Exactly. Well, and I think too about like storytelling is important. Like a lot of people end up like anybody can tell great stories about themselves, but it falls flat if you can't connect it to your audience. So you have to put your learner and your audience first. If you're going to tell a story about yourself, in order to avoid looking self-absorbed or haughty, you have to pull in number one, vulnerability, but also what's my learner going to learn from my story and how are we going to address that? So that's a nuance of storytelling that some people need help developing, and it's fun to do that with them. Okay, our quick rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Do you know what these are in advance? I don't remember.
No, I have not been shared the questions in advance. I don't have an earpiece. There's nothing. Yep.
Okay. All right. Rapid fire question number one is tell us about someone who has mentored you or advised you in a really profound way in your life. It can be from childhood, high school teacher, whatever. Who would that be?
A fictional character, probably Picard, would be, and Captain Janeway, of course. I have learned a lot about Star Trek captains. Real life, Paula Watson-Lakamp, Ron Zazadinsky, and Lori Maycomer, all local entrepreneurs. Paula was the head of the communications department for the library district.
Okay.
Ron is codegeek.net. Lori is Blue Skies Marketing. And Ron gave me my first investment to go and start up a meetup group. He paid for the cost of the meetup group so I could start up Digital Gunslingers, which was the starting gun for everything else. So
Wow. It's so much fun to trace breadcrumbs backward. And I love doing that. And I have several, little tiny seedlings that if I had not said yes, or if this had not happened, or if someone else wasn't sick, in that, like, it would have maybe happened, but not in that way. And it's fun kind of tracing back breadcrumbs like that. Okay,
Absolutely.
great. And the second question is, what are you reading right now? And what one point would you like to share with your audience that might help them in their journey, or something maybe that you have recently read? What book are you into?
You can, my reading list is pretty extensive. You can check it out on Goodreads.
Oh, good.
If you want to see my reading, my past read. Right now I'm reading Caste, which is a fascinating book. It's about racism and what racism looks like in the United States and other places, and how to combat that. I
Wow.
also have dove deep into, because of Hamilton, the Federalist Papers, which are oddly apropos to today's environment, which is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yes.
And if you haven't read about the election of 1800s, you should do so now, because it's really, they thought that the country was coming apart at the seams, and that was a very strifeful time. And my kiddos really love Captain Underpants right now, which is,
Really?
I love it because it's hilarious and they're always nice to each other. So
Oh,
I love
see,
it.
learn from them. I think that's really important right now. Well, I'll throw this out at you, Nick, because you might enjoy this. You seem to be a historian, or you like history and politics. I have a family member who is reading the biography of each president in order. And it's taking her many years to get it done. And she's got a certain list where she picks from, like, the recommended, because there's obviously, thousands of books on Abraham Lincoln or whatnot, but she's reading them in order. And I find that such a cool idea. I mean, we chat now and then on the phone, and she's telling me what she's learned about this seemingly insignificant president who really wasn't, but we don't really know about him, whoever that might have been during that call. But you might like to try that challenge.
I think that's a fantastic thing. And it sounds like great fodder for a podcast. So if she hasn't started blogging yet, she needs to.
Right. Well, yeah, she's a little bit, not as much on the social media stuff, but I would love to have her. I hope she's taking notes. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, when she wants to talk about, the whatever 60-day presidency of William Henry Harrison, let me know, because I want to know more about that guy.
Awesome. I'll totally let her know. Well, thanks so much, Nick. This was super fun. I really appreciate your time, and for, your energy and expertise around event marketing. Our community here is better because you are here with us. So thank you for all that you do. I look forward to seeing you again in person before long, and onward and upward.
Well, thank you, Cindy, and thanks
Yeah.
for having me. And same right back to you. Thanks for doing
Okay.
these interviews with so many great people.
Oh, awesome. Well, send me a few more my way and we'll just keep rolling. That sounds awesome.
Absolutely.
Have a great day. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Live
Bye-bye.
long and prosper.